อย่างที่ผู้บริหารของเราทั้งสองท่านได้กล่าวไปแล้วนะคะว่าในโลกปัจจุบันค่ะเราเดินกันอย่างรวดเร็วมากๆทุกอย่างพัฒนาไปหมุนเปลี่ยนผ่านอย่างรุนแรงแล้วก็รวดเร็วนะคะไม่ว่าจะเป็นด้านของเทคโนโลยีหรือว่าจะเป็นด้านของสังคมก็ดีค่ะพฤติกรรมของคนรุ่นใหม่นะคะหรือที่เราเรียกกันว่าชนดิจิทัลก็เช่นกันค่ะพวกเราในฐานะแหล่งเรียนรู้ผู้มีบทบาทสำคัญนะคะในฐานะโครงสร้างพื้นฐานของการศึกษารวมไปถึงกระบวนการการเรียนรู้จึงหยุดนิ่งไม่ได้เลยนะคะเพื่อให้พวกเราได้เป็นแหล่งเรียนรู้ตลอดชีวิตแล้วก็เป็นหัวใจสำคัญของการพัฒนาคุณภาพการศึกษาเราทั้งหมดนะคะจะต้องเข้าใจไปถึงแนวคิดวิธีการสร้างสรรค์ห้องสมุดรวมไปถึงพื้นที่การเรียนรู้ค่ะให้สามารถตอบสนองความต้องการที่เปลี่ยนแปลงอย่างรวดเร็วแล้วก็หลากหลายครอบคลุมทุกพื้นที่นะคะในช่วงเช้าค่ะเราจะมาเรียนรู้กันนะคะเรื่องนี้นะคะเรื่องจากคุณแอนนา คอร์ปีค่ะที่ปรึกษาด้านการศึกษาและวิทยาศาสตร์ประจำสถานทูตฟินแลนด์ในสิงคโปร์ค่ะกับหัวข้อ How Library Can Promote the Quality of Education the Experiences from Finland ค่ะก่อนที่เราจะรับฟังการบรรยายนะคะฉันขออนุญาตเล่าประวัติของวิทยากรให้ฟังคร่าวๆนะคะคุณแอนนาค่ะปัจจุบันนะคะรับผิดชอบงานครอบคลุมประเทศในแถบเอเชียตะวันออกเฉียงใต้มีประสบการณ์แล้วก็มีความเข้าใจอย่างลึกซึ้งนะคะในประเด็นทางด้านการศึกษาของหลายประเทศในเอเชียค่ะแล้วก็เป็นหนึ่งในทีมงานนะคะที่เรียกว่าทีม Finland Knowledge Network มีหน้าที่เสริมสร้างชื่อเสียงของฟินแลนด์ในฐานะประเทศชั้นนำด้านการศึกษาวิทยาศาสตร์และนวัตกรรมค่ะด้วยการส่งเสริมความร่วมมือทางด้านงานวิจัยและการศึกษาตลอดจนสร้างเครือข่ายและการเข้าถึงความรู้ใหม่ๆนะคะแน่นอนค่ะรวมไปถึงการส่งต่อความรู้ความเชี่ยวชาญนวัตกรรมศึกษาของฟินแลนด์ที่เราทุกคนกำลังจะได้สัมผัสด้วยนะคะเรามาฟังกันค่ะว่าฟินแลนด์ที่เป็นประเทศที่มีระบบการศึกษาที่มีคุณภาพประชาชนที่มีความสุขที่สุดในโลกแล้วก็มีการศึกษาที่ดีมีผลงานวิจัยในระดับโลกมีวิธีการอย่างไรนะคะที่จะให้ประชาชนไปถึงระดับนั้นได้ขอเสียงปรบมือดังๆให้กับคุณแอนนาด้วยค่ะ
Very good morning to all of you, and a special thank you for TK Park for organizing this event in cooperation with our embassy here in Bangkok. It is my really a great pleasure to be here this morning. So my name is Anna Korpi, and I work as the counselor for education and science, actually in our embassy in Singapore. But I have the privilege to also cover the whole of Southeast Asia in supporting education and science cooperation. So therefore, I have the pleasure to work here in Thailand and especially here in Bangkok actually quite often. So in addition to that, I think it was already mentioned in the brief or the bio that I sort of have two hats, meaning that I work for our Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the Foreign Service, but at the same time I also represent the Ministry of Education in Finland here in the world. So the idea to have such a role and some others as well has to really been that we want to have more cooperation. We want to learn from others. Of course, we can share our lessons learned in education, in science, higher education, but really the idea is to have further dialogue and further cooperation between Finland and Southeast Asia in my role. So it's also in that sense, it's very, very nice to be here today, and I hope you will have very interesting discussions here. And I'm really, really happy that we have Miss Jana from the city of Espoo here as well, because even though I, of course, represent the ministry, then the real work of developing libraries and our public libraries is really done on the local municipal level in the cities and the local government. So Miss Jana is the real expert here from Finland, but I'm really happy to bring the overview now in this speech for you in the beginning. So I thought that I would give you some overview about what does the library system in Finland look like on the public sector and from the ministry's perspective. Then some ideas on the very general level about what do we see as the roles and tasks of our libraries and how do they tie in with the education sector. Then I can share you a few words about the sort of guidance and legislation part, but Jana is in her presentation going to go into more depths and details and practical examples of how the libraries then outplay what is said in the law. So she's going to be diving deeper into this. And then finally I can share some ideas about what is happening at the moment in terms of cultural policy and library policy, and also some of the latest developments in Finland. Even though His Excellency said in the beginning that Finland is quite well ranked and we are known for education and of course also the public system and the welfare society and system, we do face a lot of challenges nowadays, and that's why I think the topic of the forum today of age of disruption is really a fitting concept, because this is indeed what we see in education, what we see in our welfare system, and especially what relates to equality and the equal opportunities of people. So the starting point of the Finnish libraries is that really that they are public. That means that they are free for all and free of charge. So this kind of starts from the beginning that we think that the right to, first of all, to education, to knowledge, to your capacity and capabilities of self-development has to be a right and an equal opportunity for all. So that's why also we think that the public libraries, as well as the education, are sort of human rights and opportunities that everywhere Finnish people living in no matter what part of the country should have and have to have. So the system as a whole is funded jointly between the state and the local authorities, meaning the cities and the smaller municipalities. In some richer municipalities, they have, of course, more resources, but then in some others, the state tries to support them in their operations. But, like I said in the beginning, the real work, the real implementation of the library policy, and from there on, the tasks are always operationalized and carried out by the local municipalities. The total budget of recent years has been approximately 320 million euros that we invest in our library system. That makes it up to about 58 euros per person per year in Finland. We know, of course, this is quite a high number in the world. But we believe that education, sort of the welfare state and other things that we have in place in Finland, these are choices, and these are choices that we make based on the values that we have and based on the goals that we want to have. And like in this case where we see the importance of both education and the libraries, that of course requires resources. So we have been quite successful in this because if we look at the amount of people using our libraries, like Deputy Head of Mission Heikki Karhu said already, we are one of the most literate nations and are also one of the most active ones using libraries. And it is also, we can also see that as of the different varieties of public services, the libraries are one of the most loved by our people in Finland. I will already a short word about the financing and funding system. So, like I said, they are jointly funded by the local municipalities and the state. And the state funding goes to the so-called government transfers. So they go into the different tasks, both of course for the regular service and then the main service of running the libraries, but also to different development tasks when we see a need for example, strengthen efforts in literacy, increasing literacy, or sort of increasing the reading culture, or developing library spaces as it is the culture at the moment, then there is specific funding that goes to that. We do have also, as one of the sort of equality perspectives, we also, of course, have the policy that even people with that are, for example, blind, do have the same possibility of, or do have a possibility to have access to materials and information, and therefore we have, for example, a sign language library, and then they closely work with the regular libraries in providing resources. If we look at the numbers, Finland is a small country in population, but quite a big country in size. We have 720 public libraries in Finland, and in addition we have 135 mobile libraries, meaning buses, library buses, which are then maybe the more convenient solution for some of the more remote areas where the distances are long. This is again one of the examples of the effort to still make the public library system available to all of our citizens, no matter where you are. But, like Jana will tell you, mobile libraries do exist even in densely populated cities, like in Espoo. I know that many of you might be interested in the numbers. We do have some of the numbers of how many books are loaned every year. It depends, but it's around 85 million total loans, which makes it about 15 books lended per each inhabitant, and about 9 visits to the library a year by every Finn. So these numbers are, of course, difficult to compare with bigger countries like Thailand, but at least the proportionate number of 15 books lended by each Finn is a relatively high number. Somebody yesterday, when we had another event at the parliament here, asked that what is the sort of range of materials available, and this is one of the aspects to look at what are the resources in the libraries. So about a third of the materials in the whole of Finland, this obviously depends on each location and each municipality, but in general about a third of the resources are for children, but almost half of all the books that are on loan are actually the children's books. So of course that means that one of the most important sort of client groups or stakeholders are obviously the young people and the youth, and from there on obviously kindergartens and schools are a very important cooperation partner for the libraries. In Finland, because also the education system is public, we try to be sometimes people think that we are ranked high or we are good in education because we pour all the amounts of money in the world, that we invest so much. But actually our system in education is quite cost effective. It is true that we do invest a fair amount, but it is not, let's say it's still very efficient system we have. And the same idea goes here, that we also try to utilize the public resources to the maximum. meaning that even though schools do have their own libraries, but most of them still try to cooperate a lot with the municipal libraries that are then specialized in having really the diverse materials and the expertise and the sort of capability to develop the library operation as such. So we don't see that the schools all would have abundant libraries and resources, but more the model is that cooperation between the public schools and the public libraries. And there are different operational models to support that. And really this is like in many other things as well, that when we have a public system that is based on the idea of equality and of providing equal opportunities, then of course the resources are still scarce, and we need to make the best use of them that we can. And this kind of sharing, rather than every school or every municipality having basically the same set of materials, is more the way in Finland. Nowadays, libraries, like we already discussed, that there's a lot of disruption happening nowadays in the societies, in education, and of course the same applies to the libraries as well. Of course, there used to be places where we just went to for the books. But now, since e-books and all the digital materials are much more common, and also how we use both our time and how we work, how we study has changed quite a lot, and of course means that the libraries have to change as well. So nowadays our libraries are really much more than just places to get books. There are meeting places, there are places for events. In this picture there's a concert happening. Of course, Jana will tell you much more about, for example, the maker spaces and all the other resources available in the libraries nowadays that you can also borrow or use. There are living rooms, there are workspaces, and really evolving spaces. So in that sense, we want to highlight that for us, of course, libraries are they are both a service and a place, and they have to be developed on both of these aspects. So if we really think about on the fundamental ideas of why do the libraries exist. Like I said, Jana will discuss a little bit more in depth about, for example, the legislation of libraries and how that guides the operation. But on a very general level, I will now go through some of the tasks that the system has trusted the libraries with. So we, like Kun Heikki already said in the beginning, we believe that the library is really one of the cornerstones of the ideal of education, democracy, and I have put here a word, Finnish word, sivistys, which Jana will go into more depth about what do we mean by this word. Sivistys can be roughly translated to be education, civilization, this kind of broad-based understanding of knowledge and wisdom and being enlightened. But there is no good exact English word to cover this ideal that we have in our system. This comes from the concept for us comes from the German word Bildung. But anyway, the idea is that when it's open for all, it's free of charge, like I mentioned before, then this is a capacity and a resource that promotes the educational and cultural fundamental rights of all Finnish people. And of course also foreigners that live in Finland. They sort of rationalize or make true the idea that everyone should have equal opportunities for education and developing oneself. So this is the starting point, that unless we share the idea that everybody really has the equal opportunities, we cannot, both from this perspective of education, both the perspective of, in this case, libraries, and the same goes also to some part to the welfare state ideals and, for example, the social services ideals in Finland, that we want to make sure that everybody has the same starting points. Sometimes we are more successful in this than others. But yeah, like I said, Jana will go into more depth about the sivistus, so please make a note of that in your notes. Hopefully at least one Finnish word after this you will remember. It is sivistus. Aside of just sort of providing books and information, say fictional books and storybooks, for example, for children, libraries are really cornerstones nowadays when we think about the need really for our constant and continuous learning. I know it is a topical issue here in Thailand as well, but same it is in Finland, even though we have been quite in an okay situation in terms of having a culture of lifelong learning, that people feel that they need to constantly develop themselves and learn new things, but still the sort of digital disruption of the labor markets and the work life, it is posing of a lot more pressure on us also in this respect. So again, the sort of pressure is partly on education system, partly on libraries, partly on employers, partly on universities and the different other actors, NGOs and others that work in this space. But again, library is one of the most natural places where you can access resources and access information. And really the idea is that libraries need to help citizens to find and use information. We know that for example, the very broad-based understanding of literacy nowadays is really one of the critical skills that everybody should have. And therefore, for example, one of the really important tasks is still, as it has always been, the promotion of reading and the reading culture. Nowadays, like I said, the digitalization is advancing on all fronts, and therefore also the libraries are a good place for equipping people with also the technological skills. And again, Jana will tell much more on the practical level on the practices in this. And we like to think that the library is one of those places and services in the system that even though if you are outside of the working life, if you are not currently a student in the education system or studying in the university, this is still like a place of skills guarantee for you, that if nothing else, then you still have possibility to, for example, develop your own skills and make sure that you stay up to date by using this public service that is available. This is on the same lines. Libraries also provide training and learning opportunities on a very practical level, and of course one of the most obvious ones is really the highly capable staff in the libraries, the librarians and others now working in our libraries that are always there to support the users in finding information. For example, thinking of what are the good sources for some problem you are having, and supporting you in this. And one of the I know also aging is an issue that we all share nowadays, that even though it's good that we live to live longer, but at the same time the speed of change, for example in the society, is a challenging factor to many of the elderly. And again, libraries are a very natural avenue to support the elderly also in their skills, for example, in terms of the digital world. I think I'm going to skip this because Jana is going to talk about even things like the reading dogs and others, but this is very, very important for us. And again, I think that all countries share nowadays. So that the challenge, we like to think that fake news and sort of disinformation, this kind of culture of something that is beyond truth or something that is challenging what we, for example, thought about the media in the past, is really a threat to the civilization, and at least it's a very big threat to the learning. And in this world where it's so easy to say that you're either with us or against us, or things that look to be black and white, where the reality really is all the shades of gray, we really have to be even more pursuing the understanding that we need to be able to understand what are our sources of information, how do we use information, how are we media literate, digitally literate, and critical in how we use information. But it is also another idea is that we also need to have, at least I know in Finland, it's very common that you kind of only associate with the people that are very like-minded to you, that you share the same political views, or you have the same life circumstances, and then it's difficult to see and feel empathy for others that are in completely different situations. So in that sense also, one of the ideas with libraries is that it is, since there are nowadays much more also meeting places and places where communities interact, library can be a sort of a safe place also for, say, critical discussions, even political discussions, and therefore sort of defending the very, very core ideal of freedom of speech and freedom of expression. And in Finland, we are often, as government officials, we are often asked about what is the fake news policy of Finland. So we don't believe in censorships or somehow government-led initiatives to say that this information is right and this is not. Again, here we believe that education is the only way and only tool we have available in our toolbox. And in that sense, we address this issue also very in multiple ways, meaning that we, of course, need to invest in these capabilities and skills in the education system, even starting from the early years, early learning. That's what we have done with our latest curriculum reforms, to make sure that these issues are discussed in schools, that they are embedded in all subjects, but at the same time, something that we need to invest and pay attention to throughout our lives, and not just in schools. But it is, at least we believe that there is no quick fix to this problem, other than making sure that the citizens, each and every one of us, have the skills to deal with the world that it is today. And again, this goes back to the ideal of democracy and the ideal of engaging citizens to be active members of the society. I've talked about the digitalization many times, but even though there are challenges with this, but of course we see that in education and as well as in libraries in this case, this is really also a big possibility that we need to remember, and I'm sure you are all aware of the possibilities that libraries can nowadays attract completely new audiences, people that have not been accustomed to coming to the libraries to get books, because the digital resources and possibilities can be offered to people even though you are not physically there. So this is also a big possibility, but also requires, again, the idea, the effort for development. We need to make sure that the libraries, of course, are the people working there are equipped with the right skills, but that they also have the right resources, and then they can offer sort of relevant resources and services for the citizens. And that, for example, the technological capabilities are there. I know Jana, again, will talk to you about 3D printing in libraries and all of these things that are the norm already nowadays. So that's very briefly about what are the different tasks that we see that the libraries have and play out in our system, in our society as a whole. And like I said, this is a very general view, and luckily then Jana will tell much more details and practical examples of what they, for example, do in Espoo. A word about steering libraries, and we already talked about the funding briefly, but the Ministry of Education and Culture is both responsible, like the name says, for education and for culture. And in the cultural policy, there are things like supporting the arts in all these different varieties, the cultural heritage, especially in the museums systems, but then libraries. And the ways and the tools that the ministry has to steer, for example, of course, all the different kinds of organization within the cultural policy field are legislation, budgeting, funding, and then usually the government program has some ideas of what are we specifically needing to develop. Legislation, again, Jana will talk more about the sort of evolution of what has been the thinking within the last 100 years of our public library legislation, and also that sort of nicely outplays the idea that the role of library has changed during the across times, and of course the legislation has to change with it. I'm not going to go into the details with this, but the point we want to make here is that, like I have said many times, libraries very much sit in the core of the ideal of the fundamental rights, and therefore the first level of legislation or framework comes from our constitution, which says that each and every one of us have to have, or we need to be guaranteed the freedom of expression, science, art, and education. And thereon, then we will have different acts regulating the library policy. Like I said, Finland is quite a big country. Helsinki is our capital in the very south. I will briefly talk about the Oodi Library, which is now a new library in Helsinki. But the idea is also that there is no point of the ministry trying to say that all of the different municipalities in Finland should have such and such kind of services, but really it is up to the local governments and the regions to develop their suitable operations, and that exactly how the library system also looks like in Finland. That there are different, and also in this this map, it is portrayed that we have sort of divided Finland into different regions that then have their own roles in developing their respective library networks in those regions. So, like I said, the government program every 4 years we have parliamentary elections, and then always a new government. This current government, which started its work last year, the whole government program is actually called Inclusive and Competent Finland, meaning that, of course, these issues that we talk about here today are very much even in the core of the whole government program. And in terms of culture, there are things like key elements in a good society include being prepared to do things together, to interact, to be inclusive, and to create parity. And this sort of highlights the idea that we also see culture as being one of the fundamental rights, but also tools to developing active communities, active citizenship, and sort of guaranteeing the basic rights. Maybe just one highlight that within the government program, there are nowadays more efforts in terms of even now supporting better literacy to different initiatives. But the other thing relating to libraries is now that we will ensure the accessibility of libraries, availability of mobile libraries, and diversity of collections. This is very much what we have been doing in the past, but it is still good that it's still also stated in the government program as one of the focus areas. Then there was this is one of the mobile libraries in Finland. So it's indeed a bus that goes around, and they are very loved, especially by the children. But again, Jana, I'm sure will talk more about the Espoo practices in this. So, like I said, we were happy to have a new sort of flagship to the Finnish libraries, even though from the government side we are proud of our libraries all around Finland, and I think it's safe to say, and I want to highlight this, that at least in Finland, even though we do also invest in the library buildings and the facilities, it's good to remember that still what is most important is still what is the activity and the true operation and the true added value of libraries. So instead of just thinking that it's good to have fancy looking spaces, we need to remember that like in education, we believe that you can have a really fancy looking building, but equally same quality of education happens in just very, very ordinary village schools that we also have in Finland. And the same goes with libraries. You can have fantastic everyday innovations everywhere in Finland. But Oodi is one of the ones that has been now celebrated, and is celebrated because it was one of the projects of our 100 years independence celebration in 2017. And it was opened just last year, 2018. And in that sense can be sort of seen as a gift from the government and the city of Helsinki to the Finnish people. And so it is in the very central central business district of Helsinki, just actually opposite the Parliament House. And there's a symbolic there, of course, that, like we say, that the education and the ideal of equal opportunities is really the defense line of of democracy, and that's why it's the idea there is also that it's opposite the parliament building to kind of like remind the parliamentarians that where the power is. If I quote here the mayor of Helsinki, Jan Vapavuori, that what he said in the opening of the Oodi Library, it says, Oodi symbolizes the core values of our society, such as education, culture, equality, and openness. The promotion of these values is especially vital in these times marked by uncertainty. Oodi stands firmly in the defense line of our democracy. So the name Oodi actually means ode, like ode to joy, ode to Finnish culture, equality and freedom in this case, freedom of expression. And the total cost was close to 100 million euros, which is quite a lot of money, of course. But one of the sort of significant things here was that most all people thought that this is really still a good and needed investment from taxpayers' money. And of course, this is one of the examples of how we, as Finns, value and cherish public services, and in this case, libraries. The design process of the building was also very participatory and interesting. So the idea was that it has really, from the beginning, should be developed as a house of all its residents. And therefore, there were many sort of panels and sort of audiences when the regularly citizens got to give their views, their so-called library dreams, to the designers and the architects. So they even got to decide through this process called participatory budgeting. They got to choose where some of the allocated funds for this project went, and also got to influence in things like what kind of chairs are they buying in the library to make sure that they are then chairs that they want to use actually in the end. And really the core there was that to engage the users already in the design phase is how we believe that we will create spaces that are going to be most loved by the users and the citizens in this case. Even the name actually was chosen by the regular citizens. So another example here is that when I mentioned that the government issues government transfers for specific projects and things that are deemed important. And like I said, there is a new focus in, continued focus in developing the literacy and the sort of enthusiasm of children to keep reading books, but also other materials, of course, to have this, we say, culture of reading that we create already from the very early stages of life by reading bedtime stories and reading stories. So in this case, actually, it's been the public library from small city of Seinäjoki in western part of Finland that has been given the development task to develop this over the next couple of years. So I think I will sum up here. We started a little late, but I think it's okay to keep you on the lunch schedules. But if I sum the three things that the ministry thinks that have been sort of the cornerstones and success elements of Finnish public library system being successful, and sort of really functional and useful supplements and elements in creating quality of education, it has really been the long-term and systematic work that both the state and then the local governments have done together over the years, over the last over 100 years. And yesterday also when we had discussions with some of the policymakers here, that was one of our messages also for them that, like Kun Heikki said in the beginning, none of the things do happen overnight. We have to keep developing. We have to have systemic and sustainable approach to and a vision where we want to go. But since the resources are not through the moon, then it's something that we do step by step. But at least if the direction is right, then the long-term work pays off. And then really the cooperation between the state and municipalities in this has been the key also. Of course, we need the state, but when we also need really the people on the ground, the real people that are the visionaries and the innovators of the different practices, like in the city of Espoo that you will hear later on. And finally, we do have really high-level people working in our libraries. The education is in that sense high level as well, but also we have been quite innovative in using the different kinds of resources, even taking regular citizens to come in to provide parts of services or offer their ideas. And in that sense, we don't think that the wisdom in developing libraries, nor in developing, for example, education systems, sits at the Ministry of Education. It does not. So it does sit with the regular people, with the actual professionals, and with the users. So I think I will finish with this, and thank you very much for your attention today.
Thank you very much. Would you please remain on the stage? Ms. Korpi, would you please remain on the stage for the Q&A session?
Okay, yes.
And now we are going to open the floor for the Q&A session. ช่วงนี้เราจะเปิดให้ทุกท่านได้ถามคำถามนะคะกับท่านวิทยากรค่ะมีไหมเอ่ยถ้ามียกมือขึ้นสูงๆเลยนะคะถามเป็นภาษาไทยหรือถามเป็นภาษาอังกฤษก็ได้ค่ะเรียนเชิญค่ะเดี๋ยวขออนุญาตนะคะเดี๋ยวขออนุญาตให้ทางด้านหลังก่อนนะคะ
สวัสดีครับขออนุญาตถามเป็นภาษาไทยนะครับอยากทราบการบริหารการจัดการระบบห้องสมุดในระดับมหาวิทยาลัยและวิทยาลัยครับของในประเทศฟินแลนด์นะครับผม
So the question is how do you manage the system in the library in the university in the higher education?
In a higher education university. So the universities have their own libraries, and they are a little bit different from the public libraries that we talked about now. It is really up to because of course the science community needs different kinds of resources that, for example, the public libraries. So they do have their own operations, and another really interesting library, for example, in the city of Helsinki is now the University of Helsinki Library that has been also refurbished just lately. So if you have a chance to come visit Helsinki, you could at the same time visit Oodi and the University of Helsinki Library. But yeah, they have their own operations, but at least on my understanding, they do work sort of closely with the public libraries, even sharing resources and that. But yes, it is a little bit different from this public system that we just now talked about.
ได้คำตอบไหมเอ่ย เชิญท่านต่อไปเลยค่ะ
Good morning. I'm Sunida Bunyanun from the National Assembly Library of Thailand. I would like to have a question to you that do you think about the lifestyle and the climate or environment have the effects to the development of the library? Do you think? Thank you.
Do I think
The environment in terms of climate มีอะไรอีกนะคะ
climate and lifestyle
I mean the lifestyle of the people Does this stuff affect the library development?
Okay. Do you refer to Finland being cold and dark? I'm sure to some extent, yes. Just yesterday, Kunyana mentioned that one of the reasons why Finnish people are avid readers is probably that at least half the year it's very dark and very cold outside, so there's nothing else to do. In that sense, yes, but I think more, and also, I mean, one of the other angles, for example, behind the Oodi development has been that while it is, for example, half of the year it's quite cold and not so pleasant to be outside in parks or public spaces outside, it has been important for the city, for example, in city of Helsinki and other cities, of course, to have public spaces that are, of course, indoors and in that sense can be sort of inviting for people to come spend their time, some space that is not commercial space like malls or sort of stores or others. So in that sense, yes, I think it's very important, and the libraries have been really important part of the public spaces, but of course being inside and covered in that sense. But in general, I don't think the climate is in that sense too big. I think more it's been like in Finland's case, it has been the really, really sound belief in education and, for example, in reading and literacy as the keys to personal success, but also the national success and the community success. So more than because also I know sometimes it's also that the question is that why are you so good in education? Are you so good because it's so cold and there's nothing else to do than to study? But I'm sure to some extent it affects the mindsets of people, but it is still, I believe, more the culture of appreciating and valuing education and the civistus that you will hear more about.
Thank you. มีคำถามเพิ่มเติมไหมคะ ขออนุญาตเป็น เดี๋ยวขออนุญาตเป็นคำถามสั้นๆนะคะ ท่านไหนที่ขออนุญาตยกมืออีกครั้งได้ไหมคะ เจ้าหน้าที่จะได้นำไมโครโฟนไปให้เชิญค่ะ คุณอนาจะมีเวลาอยู่กับเราประมาณ5 นาทีนะคะว่าเดี๋ยวคุณอนาจะต้องรีบไปบรรยายที่อื่น
ขอสอบถามเป็นภาษาไทยนะคะ
ค่ะ
อยากสอบถามว่าในประเทศฟินแลนด์นะคะมีช่องทางการสื่อสารอะไรบ้างที่ทำให้มั่นใจได้ว่าประชากรของเขาทุกคนสามารถเข้าถึงความรู้ได้อย่างเท่าเทียมกันนะคะ
Alright, in Finland, how many promoting channel do you have in terms of you can promote to your people and they know where the libraries are, where they open and stuff?
Promoting channels. You mean like
communication channel?
Well, okay. I would say nowadays, most of the people do get their information online. Like all the libraries have their websites, but also sometimes I guess you advertise in local newspapers or some like the opening hours and. Sorry. And yes. So like Jana is here saying that social media is actually a very important channel nowadays also to communicate about events and things. But it is mostly the typical channels online and social media. Finland has, we are very fortunate to have sort of a high level of freedom of press, and that means that our media channels are also very respected and trusted by our people. And we have for example, the Finnish broadcasting company is of course, they do a lot of sort of documentaries and sort of, for example, news pieces and others on culture issues and education issues and that. So, of course, that is another sort of broad-based channel to kind of promote different messages. But even though that they are government, they are still independent. But yeah, so I would say very typical channels. No secrets there.
Alright thank you very much ขอเสียงปรบมือดังๆให้กับคุณแอนนาด้วยนะคะ Thank you very much for your time Thank you very much for the insightful and informative session Thank you